Hello and welcome. This is the Astrology of the Week Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Chani Nicholas. In this episode, we are talking about the astrology of June 12th. The big news about this week is that we have a new moon on Saturday the 17th. At 9:37 p.m. Pacific time. Now, that is, of course, Sunday, the 18th, if you are in a later time zone. But nevertheless, the meaning of this new moon is really mixed, as Gemini would have it. It's a weird new moon. I don't recommend doing anything major with it. I recommend just enjoying the weekend and doing your thing. And, we'll talk about the nuances of the week. But it's definitely odd because it's sitting in a square, like a really tight square to Neptune. And Neptune is the planet that brings us into the twilight zone. It brings us into fantasy and delusions and things that feel like they're untethered from reality altogether. So it's not a new moon that's infused with a lot of really great staying power, which is what you want new moons to be. Like, new moons are supposed to be something that we begin activity or project or relationship or something with. But because this one is so cloudy and murky and muddled and honestly confusing, I'm not going to do anything with it. You can do what you want, but I'm not suggesting working with this one, which is too bad because the ruler of it is Mercury, and Mercury's in Gemini right now, and it's in a sextile to Venus, which is really lovely. So I'm not saying that this weekend will be bad at all, actually. I'm saying that I wouldn't really hang too much on this new moon. I wouldn't use it for any kind of major thing. But again, do what you want to do. I think what this new moon could be really good for is discovering and uncovering our relationship to beauty and art. And I think it could also be really good for using metaphorically like we would use watercolor. It's not something specific and detailed. It's something that gives us the impression of beauty or the impression of what our ideal situation would be. So it's a really good new moon to work with in terms of envisioning what you're wanting to do. So daydreaming. This is the perfect new moon to lie around and daydream. Go to the park, spread out a blanket, and cloud gaze and see what comes. It's a really great marking for allowing yourself a lot of time to do free association and to play with the kind of impressions that you're getting and see what happens, but not to expect anything concrete out of it, because that's not what it is. Okay, let's do the rundown of the week. There's nothing that really happens until Thursday. And, Thursday is a reality check. So we're spending the week kind of moving towards this new moon. So the light of the moon is decreasing. We're letting something go. We're preparing space for something new. And on Thursday, Mercury is going to square Saturn. And that is a spell check of sorts, metaphorically speaking. It is a fact checker. It is no, actually what you said was totally incorrect, and we need to rework that whole thing. So prepare for that on Thursday. Either you're finding the mistakes or other people are pointing them out, as lovely as that always is to experience. But there's something here that's there's a no in the air, or there's a roadblock somewhere that we need to contend with. The conversation ends, or the conversation comes to a point where we need to kind of reconfigure how we're trying to get our point across because something isn't working in our communications. It's not a big deal. It goes by fairly quickly, but it is a point of contention or a point of correction. And that can be really, really helpful. It can be really good to bring your stuff to the editor and for the editor to be like just red penning all of the work that we've put into a piece. But we want to know before it goes out. So it's a good day to do that for yourself, for each other, to like do the spell check, to do the grammar check, to do the fact checking. And we might even notice that kind of in the ethers that there's that's incorrect actually and being corrected. So on Saturday, Mercury goes on to make that sextile to Venus, which is lovely for a weekend because we want to talk about pleasure. We want to talk with our loves. We want to recite poetry. We want to send love notes. Like tell all your besties that you're just completely enthralled with them and they're the bee's knees. And make sure you take in words of sweetness and affirmation and also give them. And then also on Saturday, Saturn stations retrograde. So one of the big things in your personal chart that we'll talk about in your weekly reading, the weekly reading that's in the subscriber version of the Chani app, is we're going to talk about what Saturn has done so far in your chart. So the area of your chart that contains Pisces is being worked over by Saturn. And so it's going to pull focus again on what needs correction, what needs tightening, what needs reformatting, what needs to be corrected, what needs to be adhered to, what commitments we're making, and if those were the right commitments. And this is now going to be a time where we're going to review that. And anything you have in your chart that's in the early degrees, like the first 8 degrees of a mutable sign, so that's Virgo, Pisces, Sag, and Gemini, those placements, again, if they're in that first 8 degrees of those signs, are going to be given a permission slip to go to the principal's office to have a talk. It's not a fun permission slip. It is a review. And again, there's a really critical eye on stuff. So we're going to talk about that. And also you can check the transit section of the Chani app and it'll tell you if you're having a Saturn transit. Always really good to know if you have a Saturn transit because sometimes it feels like life is being mean to us. And then we're like, oh, I'm in a Saturn transit. So maybe I just won't take it so personally and maybe life has a point right now and I could rethink how I'm doing this, or I could correct my course of action in this way. So big Saturn themes this week and big Mercury themes this week. So again, we're really thinking about how we're wording things, how we're communicating our message, how we're trying to get it across, and how we can be thoughtful about that and how we can maybe not, take the corrections we get so personally. I'm not good at that. Maybe you are. And then that new moon. The new moon again happens 9:37 p.m. Pacific time. It is square Neptune all the way. And it's also making a whole sign square to Saturn. So it feels like it's mixed with critique and something that is foggy and soggy and not very clear. So again, the best way I think to work with Neptune is to meditate, is to do art practices, is to stare at the ceiling, to cloud gaze, to be in a situation where you feel at one with something bigger than you. And it might be a good new moon to just plant the seed of intention about spending a little bit more time in a unstructured way. I pause when I say that because the Saturn retrograde of it all actually wants us to rethink how we're being structured. So it's like both. And sometimes there's like, we have to structure time to be unstructured. I don't know. I don't want to be too intense about it, but it's really important to have a sense of how we're spending time, how we're marking time. And new moons help us to say like, okay, this is a time to close something down and rethink and reseed and start anew. And if we're starting anew with a Neptune-Saturn influence, then we're starting anew by saying there's some time that's really good to quarantine, or we can't use that word anymore, it's too triggering. There's some time that's really good to set aside for meandering and for being nonlinear and for not caring about getting things done or making sense of everything. It's really important to have some time set aside to daydream and to be in our fantasy worlds. Like, what happens when we go in our fantasy world? What are the images? What are the scenarios? What are the scenes? And is there something in those fantasies that we can actually bring into our reality in a way that feels really generative and creative? And that's what this new moon can bring us. So I invite you to spend some of this weekend doing that, dreaming, and see where it takes you without any agenda. If you want to work with this new moon in a deeper way, we've got new moon ritual, altar suggestions, a meditation, and journal prompts. And writing is such a good thing to do with this new moon. Again, poetry, anything that helps you to open up the doors of your imagination. So highly recommend reading your loves, your favorite chapter of a book or poem or what have you. And singing, music, like all the arts are really good for working with Neptune. Thank y'all so much for leaving reviews in the App Store. We read them, we love them, we share them with the whole team. I want to leave you with this one review. It's called Healing by Queen of Spades. When I originally signed up for Chani, I had no idea how transformative this experience could be. The start of the year with a resolution to meditate more decided to work with Chani app as my guide for meditation and self-reflection. I'm so grateful that my friend recommended the Chani app to me. The rest is herstory, as they say. This is such a wonderful complementary tool to therapy and trauma work and self-awareness work. Thank you, Chani and team, for such a wholehearted, compassionate, clear-eyed lens on the world and the stars that truly reflects who I am and who I want to be more of in my life. All right, sending you lots of love. I will see you back here next week. Bye for now.